Sunshine, you're not following your heart. You're following your hormones. And if you don't understand the difference, you will keep submitting emotionally while resisting structure spiritually. Now lean in because some of y'all are emotionally loyal to men who have never actually led you anywhere. Woo! I said it. The conversations feel deep. The chemistry feels intense. The connection, it feels different. And suddenly, you're emotionally attached to a man who still says, let's just see where this goes. That is not headship. That's confusion. And culturally, we normalize the whole cycle. Meet, connect fast, get physical, confuse intensity with intimacy. And then everybody's shocked when somebody gets emotionally hurt. Make that make sense. But here's the problem. Dopamine doesn't build stability. It builds attachment to the feeling. So now you're not attached to the man. Listen here. You're attached to the attention, the emotional high, the validation, and the fantasy. And when the energy shifts, you crash. Not a cute little stumble either. It's the scary one. I'm talking staring at your phone and replaying conversations, analyzing text messages like you're a courtroom reporter, like it's evidence. And your family's like, girl, are you okay? Meanwhile, you're emotionally recovering from a relationship that never even had structure. Sunshine. Today, we're talking about hormones, headship, emotional attachments, communication, marriage, dating, and why God's order matters more than your feelings.
You're listening to The Sunshine Y Show with Lindsay Brown.
Hey, Sunshine. Welcome back to The Sunshine Y Show, the official podcast of the Sunshine Y movement. I'm your host, Lindsay Brown. And around here, we teach women how to stop misbehaving in relationships, communicate with clarity, and embrace their God-given femininity. We're growing up, glowing up, and letting go of the chaos we keep chasing. So grab your tea, your blanket, and maybe your little journal, because this one's going to expose some things lovingly. Headship is responsibility, not control. Now let's clean something up immediately. Because some women hear the word headship, and instantly picture control, silence, losing themselves, and some man barking orders while everybody suffers quietly. No, ma'am. That is not biblical headship. Biblical headship is responsibility, and responsibility creates structure and safety. It's like pet snuggling comfort. Now let's make this practical. Get this. A healthy man leads with clarity, consistency, accountability, and direction. And we love that kind of man, not the one who leads with confusion. You know how exhausting it is being emotionally connected to somebody who just keeps changing. One day he's intentional, next day he disappears. Then he pops back up talking about, I've just been busy. Mister, please, nobody's buying it. That inconsistency keeps your nervous system anxious because women respond emotionally to consistency and safety, not intensity. That's psychology. And culturally, we've confused dominance with leadership. But biblical leadership reflects Christ. And Christ leads through sacrifice, not selfishness. Now, hear me clearly, sunshine. You cannot follow leadership that lacks responsibility because following irresponsibility leads to instability. And instability will drain you emotionally every single time. Now, let's talk a little bit about hormones. And hormones are not discernment, because this is where many women get emotionally trapped. Hormones can feel like clarity because they create emotional intensity. And dopamine, we've talked about that before, creates excitement. It rewards novelty and unpredictability. And that's why emotionally inconsistent men can feel addictive. Why some of us like bad boys. Now, oxytocin, we've talked about that as well. You may recall that that's the bonding hormone. It creates emotional attachment through closeness, vulnerability, affection, and physical intimacy. And as women of God, physical intimacy occurs within marriage. But let's keep going. So when relationships move too fast, emotionally or physically, women often attach before they discern. And sunshine, that changes everything. Because once attachment enters the room, objectivity picks up her purse and walks out. Now, instead of evaluating character, consistency, and direction, you start protecting the emotional connection. And this is where I need my single sunshines to hear me clearly. Your emotions are real, but they're not your authority. God is. And your first submission is not to a man, sunshine. It's to God. Because when you let hormones lead before wisdom, you risk a bonding outside of God's will. And anything you build outside of God's order, you'll have to maintain in your own strength. And as many of you have realized, that will deeply exhaust you. So now, instead of observing intentionally, requiring clarity, and protecting your peace, you start emotionally investing based on chemistry. And culturally, women are being taught if it feels strong, it must be right. No, no, ma'am. This is awful advice, because stimulation is not compatibility. Compatibility requires values, direction, intentionality, consistency, not butterflies. Butterflies are not leadership. Single sunshines, please do not engage in emotional submission without commitment. So we're going to bring this into dating, because some of y'all are emotionally submitting to men who haven't even committed to you yet. Now you're rearranging your life, silencing your needs, and pretending to be cool with whatever. Meanwhile, he still hasn't clearly defined anything. This is where you wind up in a relationship with a man for years. No definition, no leadership, just you in this relationship that's going nowhere. Sis, this is totally imbalance. And this whole, I'm just going to go with the flow, baby. That's how people end up emotionally attached to situationships that never had direction in the first place. That's like getting in a car with no destination and acting shocked when you got lost. No structure, no clarity, just vibes and emotional confusion. Lipstick and eyelashes doesn't pretty this up. And let's be honest, a lot of women think being easygoing will make a man stay. But self-abandonment trains men to underperform. Because when you require nothing, many people rise to exactly that standard. Now, let me show you what grounded feminine communication sounds like. Instead of, I'm fine with whatever, try this. Hey, I really enjoy being close to you, but I've learned I can't keep getting emotionally attached to things that don't have clarity behind them. I need to know we're building towards something real. See the difference? She's soft, she's feminine, but she's grounded. No begging, no chasing, and no pretending confusion feels good, because it doesn't. Now, married sunshine, come close, because this part here, this one matters. This does not mean tolerate dysfunction, because tolerated dysfunction multiplies, and eventually it turns into resentment, emotional distance, and constant frustration. And we want to spare you that. But this also does not mean control your husband every time you feel anxious, because emotional control creates disorder too. Now, let's make this real. You know those moments where your husband is trying, but you're correcting every little thing: the dishes, the driving, the parenting, the timing, the tone. Now he's sitting there feeling like, why even try? And eventually, some men emotionally withdraw, not because they don't care, but because repeated criticism makes leadership feel unsafe. And I have to say this, sunshine: no eye rolls, no neck rolls, and no twisted lips. No mumbling under your breath while walking away, because disrespect shuts connection down quickly. And it's just not worth the cost. And let me encourage you: when a healthy man feels respected, he often becomes more affectionate, more emotionally open, more intentional, more protective. And this is what you want, sunshine, because respect creates emotional safety for a man. And where safety exists, people flourish. Now, hear me clearly. Respect does not mean silence. A calm woman can be very clear. You can say, hey, babe, I see this differently. Can we talk through it together? Without turning the whole house into an emotionally hostile environment. That's maturity, sunshine. It's time for a sunshine story. Sunshine was married to David. David was a good man, not perfect, but good. And in the beginning, he led well. But over time, Sunshine started stepping in more and more. You know how we can be sometimes: correcting, overriding, taking over. At first, Sunshine thought, I'm just helping. But eventually, David stopped initiating, stopped planning, stopped leading. And now, Sunshine was frustrated, talking about, I just want you to lead. But sis, leadership cannot grow in an environment where every effort gets criticized. How would you feel if someone was constantly criticizing you? But let's get back. And one night it hit her when she realized she'd been responding from frustration instead of partnership. Wow, that's growth right there. So instead of, you never know what you're doing, she started saying, hey, babe, I feel overwhelmed when there's no clear plan. Can we walk through this together? And that one shift changed the atmosphere. Because softness with clarity creates connection. Now let's anchor this in the word. 1 Corinthians 14:33 says, for God is not a God of disorder, but of peace and sunshine. Confusion is disorder. Mixed signals are disorder. Emotional chaos is disorder. Attachment without clarity creates, you guessed it, disorder. And God's design for relationship is peace, not confusion. Proverbs 4:23 says, above all else, guard your heart. Notice that God didn't say, follow your heart. He said, guard it. So here's your coaching moment for today. Single sunshines. If he hasn't committed to leading you, you should not be committed to following him emotionally. You follow God. Married sunshine. If you want leadership to flourish, create space for it. Don't compete with it. And remember, your feelings are real, but they are not your authority. God is. Ladies, this week, I want you to ask yourself, am I attached or aligned? Am I building with wisdom or just chemistry? Am I creating peace or emotional chaos? And if this episode blessed you, send it to another sunshine who needs the conversation. Until next time, sunshine, keep your light on and your standards high.
Real talk, real growth, real you.